Welcome to the Athlogic podcast. My name is Chris Orlando, the co-founder and director of marketing at Athlogic. We offer a free sports analytics app to track high school football stats, helps the team gain an edge, gives their athletes an increased platform to college recruiters. And we also work with the school to create a sports analytics club for the high school. So we want this to be a resource for coaches, for players, to help them improve their teams. We want to dive deep into the game of football, talk a little bit about how coaches are using analytics to get a competitive advantage, and then really to find out what they're doing to kind of help their kids. And I know one way that they're focusing on it now is really the mental aspect of the game. And it's with that said, it's actually my pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, Mr. Tyler Royal. Tyler is a former walk-on at UNC. Before that, he transferred from Wingate. He was a stud athlete at a small high school in North Carolina and is a professed numbers geek. So Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be with you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm from, a small town in Faison, North Carolina. One stoplight, two gas stations, and about 300 people at your local high school, so a humble beginning, but a place that I definitely hold near and dear to my heart. And it gave me an interesting story as I transitioned from athlete to the professional world. But nonetheless, it's been a pleasure to, meet with you here. And I look forward to diving into some of those topics of being an athlete and professional.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things. What was interesting about when I had the opportunity to talk to you was just to kind of hear your background and where you came from. And it's there's how many small towns across the U.S. You said 300 students. So what was like your college recruiting experience? Like how you only had 300 people in the high school. So how many kids were on the team? How many kids had the opportunity to kind of further their career? Because I think you played college with one of your boys, right?
Yeah.
So how tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, it was really it was probably unique. One of the, coolest parts about being in a small town is knowing everybody. And so, you're coming up in a small town and it's pretty obvious early on, where the talent is and those eyes get drawn to you pretty quickly. And
Sure.
so coming up through middle school, I was kind of a late bloomer, and a couple of my friends and teammates they were grown men already, and so the eyes were on them. And especially in a small town, uh, whoever the star is, they just automatically send them to the NFL, right? Like they're automatic, first round draft pick and all of that stuff. So it was interesting to kind of be in the shadows. But as high school progressed and sophomore year and junior year came around, I found the ball in my hand. I was playing quarterback in the triple option offense, and we were averaging 400 yards. I mean, on the ground. I mean, I'm just collectively just not even trying, throwing the ball once a game and running the ball 400 yards a game. Well, senior year comes around, and by then I've had, we'll say, 10 to 12 schools. Not exactly a huge um, recruiting or following. Went to a bunch of Division II programs and looked at a couple of Division III schools and thought, okay, if these are the options, that's cool. That works for me. I want to play ball with my friend Lee. So going into senior year, my goal was I just want to play ball with my best friend. I want to get an education, and I really want to experience that same brotherhood that I had at this small school. So um, senior year comes around, had 32, 33 rushing touchdowns, 5 or 6 passing touchdowns, 6 or 7 special teams touchdowns. So I ended up being an all-state athlete. Um, I played kickoff return, punt return, safety, had I think 85 tackles, and ended up with 2,100 rushing yards.
You were an athlete.
Yes, sir. So at that point, though, it's senior year, and I end up posting 6 touchdowns and 425 yards against our crosstown rival Princeton, and they had the number one running back basically in America at the time, Johnny Frazier,
Okay.
who just turned out to be an absolute beast. Went on to play at NC State, but yeah, that right there was what put me on the scene. But yet it was too late for me to get a scholarship. I mean, if you think about it, by junior, senior year, unless you're absolutely like blazing on the scene, you're not going to earn a scholarship that late in your high school career, especially to UNC, which was in a little bit of trouble at the time for some of their academic issues and had been cut, you know,
Right.
scholarships. So we went to Wingate. We played together. He redshirted that year. I played. Um, Not necessarily a star by any means, but I played, and that was enough for the coach that was recruiting me from UNC to say, "Hey, we want you. Come on." And that was the best decision of my life.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that process, because I know, and so you transferred. There was no transfer portal back in that time, right?
Yeah,
I'm an old guy, so there was definitely no transfer. But I was D3, so I didn't have any issues transferring. But you had to sit out a year while you transferred to UNC, correct? So
yeah.
kind of tell me a little bit about that, as compared to what it is today, and how did that kind of help you kind of refocus your efforts on what you were paying attention to, and really kind of that mental aspect of the game a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably to me. I mean, I get excited just you asking that question because when I transferred, you know, it was almost like there's this small window of hope that I can make it to UNC. But it wasn't a skill thing. There are plenty of athletes who are physically capable of making it. It was more so, can I keep their attention and can I be productive enough to, by the end of that year, still have their confidence that they had before I played at the next level?
Right.
That was my challenge, and these guys wanted to see physical development. They wanted to see 10, 15 pounds of muscle stacked on me through a camp and a season. Well, that's tough when you don't have those Division I resources, when you don't have the nutrition and all of those things. So there are many rules around how you can communicate at the next level. But basically, I played that season. I loosely stayed in touch with the coaching staff, and and when it was time for me to transfer, I applied. My grades still weren't good enough to get in, and they got me in.
Oh wow.
So it was a last ditch effort, communicating, them still being interested in me, still having film from last season, and then he also wanted me to play defense. So just kind of knowing, hey, this guy's an athlete, a ball hawk. I want him. I'm not exactly sure where he's going to play, but he's clearly capable of playing. Let's just give him a shot. And that's what they did. They did that with me and Cole Holcomb, and he's currently still playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so it's really neat. Thomas Jackson, us three were three people who they were anticipating to be big time. Thomas Jackson made a name for Carolina, and Cole Holcomb continues to do so.
Sure.
But that's when I realized that I went in and I had to sit out that first year, unlike the transfer portal kids of today's time. And
Right.
so I kind of had to commit myself fully to a year of practice and work without a guaranteed payoff, because I then have to go through another training camp. See, they took me to training camp the first time, even though I wasn't going to play. And so that tells you something, right? Like, okay, we just want to see what he's about. Well, the second training camp came around, and I had earned my spot as a 1 or a 2 on every special team. And we're going to play South Carolina, Jadeveon Clowney at Bank of America Field. And I took a hit that was so, jarring to me that it completely changed. I mean, it reset my clock, if you will. But that again was one of the best things that ever happened, because I realized, hey, this is temporary. And like my window was this short. And so it allowed me to redefine what I wanted out of life, but it also allowed me to look at life realistically instead of a lens through a game it's temporary. And that's why I say it was the best thing that ever happened, because it happens to so many people. But now I was put in a position where I could actually help them get through that and prevent, kids in the local area from experiencing what I was going through at that exact moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it gives you a different perspective. And it's, I always say, if you're a D1 athlete, you're a freak of nature. And those guys are something special. And when they hit you, you feel it. So
Yeah, that
absolutely.
without a doubt.
No doubt. So it's interesting. So you talked a little bit kind of on like the mental aspect and the focus that you had to pay attention to. So I mean, I've always lived, and you play ball. We always talk about the eye in the sky doesn't lie. I always talk to on in college. I was a math major and a statistics minor, right? So it was always that adage that numbers never lie either. So I know you're a professed numbers geek as well. So I welcome you to the club for sure.
Yes,
But
sir.
kind of tell me a little bit about some of the stuff that you're doing. Again, we obviously at Athlogic are a data company, and really help these programs perform better because of all the analytics that we have. But talk a little bit about some of the number crunching that you've done, and what kind of insights you've gotten from that.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. You know, we were kind of on this timeline of football and life colliding, and it was about that time that I met with Kevin Guskowitz, and he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, you know, we want you to be a part of this study." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I've soon found out that I would be working with four local high schools surrounding in Orange County and UNC's football team. And so I was not only, you know, I was working with collecting data, especially at practice, because there's so many hits going on at practice. We used GPSs and accelerometers in the helmet, you know, linked with a CPU on the sideline. And basically, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. We had 4 or 5 cameras around, and we would basically nonstop collect data. And so it would be my job to not only make sure that the video and the GPS is, you know, if we got a reading, we needed that on video. So over time, my job was basically to innovate the ways in which that data was being collected. It was clear that we weren't receiving the reading or the video, and the hits from the GPSs weren't lining up, because if you have one or the other, well, that's not a complete reading. So we needed to find out how could we always get a clear reading. Well, I began to team up with the middle school science club, who were using DJI drones. And
Okay.
so we teamed up with them and never missed a reading at practice again. So it was more so, it, you know, like I say, I was probably one of the least gifted in the IQ department in that lab. But it was from being an athlete, I realized, hey, these behaviors are being developed at practice, not in the games. They're revealed in the games. So if we can get in there and practice, we can get so much more data. If we elevate it to the 21st century and use these drones, we can collect as much data as we absolutely need. And we ended up being able to counsel these kids, and in a 3-year longitudinal study, bring the concussions from, let's just say we minimize them by about 75% through awareness, film study, and also some physiological some exercises and some
Sure.
mobility. So yeah, that's kind of where I come from. I kind of try to merge an athlete and a nerd, and that's kind of the bridge that I'm on, you know. But
That sounds like our sports analytics clubs that we create. So I'm right there with you, my friend. Absolutely,
so
and it's fantastic to hear that. So I guess I have a question for you then. Kind of, what's the relationship then, or what's that delicate balance between the football workouts, the cardio workouts, and then like the mental health and wellness aspect of it?
yeah, well, it's funny you asked that, because you know today what the goal is, at least for the people that I serve, I'm trying to connect those three things, and especially mental health, right?
Right.
Because there's so much that a young man or a young woman or anybody in any phase of life can glean from exercise. Not only, you know, bone density and you know muscle mass, but really looking at how that can help us handle situations, and how exercise and controlling our heart rate and maintaining maintaining control of ourselves in situations that are difficult, that's what exercise provides for us. And it also provides us with endorphin rushes that you just can't deny. So we're trying to bring, I consult out of a mental health practice here in the Triangle, and we're essentially trying to develop a new model of care, which involves exactly what we're talking about, right? Exercise, breathing, and a component in psychotherapy or in mental health that simply doesn't exist, but it's one that cannot be denied. And so what we're trying to do is reconcile um, mental health back with exercise, so that people can understand what they can control, and that if we can just give somebody a few um, a few aspects of life that they can manage, you can give them hope, and you can change the life of them and people in the community and their families. And that's all we're trying to do, is give people hope through managing the small things, whether it's breathing, accountability and scheduling, or just developing a structure and a family, team kind of environment. We that's kind of what exercise has provided for me as an athlete and a professional.
Absolutely. It's those small little building blocks that don't seem like a lot one by one, but you look back and you've added 10, 15 of them together. It's some pretty big changes, which
Yes,
is
sir.
great. So I know you've done a lot of stuff with the concussions, and you do a lot of stuff with the analytics and all that. Where do you kind of see, with all this data that we're kind of collecting and how we can kind of hone in on these things, where do you kind of see this going? What's exciting to you about the future?
What's exciting to me about the future? I mean, it's really simple. People like me in small towns across America exposing themselves, and not for something ridiculous and viral, but imagine if and I'm thinking about the kid that's in my shoes who scores 6 touchdowns and rushes for 400 yards today on a Friday, somewhere in America. Those kids, if using this type of app and technology, can put themselves on an even playing field. They can allow themselves to be seen when otherwise they would simply have been looked by. And so that to me is, you look at Javante Williams from UNC, he came from my hometown. You know, you look at so many talented people who come from small areas. Well, there were 10 to 15 people before them, who allowed those types of people to be seen. And
Sure.
so that this app to me is exciting, and the future is exciting, because if we can put this information in the hands of everyone in the stands, in the hands of recruiters, we can allow people and their natural talents to be put on display, instead of falling by the wayside and working at a local store. Nothing wrong with that, but it'd really be nice if we could have people from small places recognize that they can also be productive members of society and chase their dreams as well. And I think this app does that in a multitude of ways.
Absolutely, my man. I couldn't have said it better. It's really about getting that exposure that you need, and you've had a very unique perspective. So I just want to wrap up, man. I really appreciate you coming on here. It's great to hear the way you kind of view the world and how you kind of do things. So thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Again, thanks to Tyler Royal. We really appreciate everything you're doing. Wish you continued success, and keep on impacting the lives that you're touching, my man. That's an awesome thing. So we're going to sign off, my friend. This is Chris Orlando signing off for the Athlogic podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye bye.